Is offensive line the biggest question mark for the Oklahoma Sooners after spring ball?
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube, so hit that subscribe button wherever you get Locked On Sooners. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I've got a competitive side. I know you do too. And I'm also a big fan of Monopoly and the Monopoly Go app that's available on the App Store or the Google Play Store. It's a great twist on the classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on the KRF Sports app. Josh, we spent all offseason talking about offensive line. We've gone through spring ball. We've gone through the spring game. So I pose the question to you, is offensive line still the biggest question for the Oklahoma Sooners?
I think because of the importance of the collective group, yes. Though I would enter into the discussion that I think tight end has made a serious lap around the track playing catch up. I was not super thrilled with what we saw from Bauer Sharp, Devon Mitchell. Collectively, tight end, I think, has some question marks for Oklahoma. But the importance of the tight end group being a difference maker versus the offensive line continuing to be great, the tight ends aren't as important as the collection of the offensive line is. So for that reason, I guess I'm leaning still toward offensive line, but I liked a lot of what we saw from the ones. When you think about Tarquin and Sexton and Bates looked like he'd taken a big step forward. And obviously Fabechi, Weewu, and Jake Taylor, that starting five, if that's the five that Oklahoma goes with, John, I think they're going to be okay up front. But we do probably still need to see more, and we need to see the depth continue to improve up front.
Yeah, if there's an issue that I still have maybe with the offensive line, it is the depth. Obviously, you add a Branson Hickman, and that gives you a big time, addition to play center. It gives you better depth if Josh Bates is your center too, or if he's your starter and Branson Hickman is your backup center. I think that gives you better depth. Or if a guy like Hickman bumps over to guard, and then maybe you bump over, Sexton back to tackle, and then Tarkin is now your swing tackle. Again, it gives you better depth when you add an offensive line piece like a Branson Hickman, who's played a ton of college football. But right now, as things stand, you're a little light right there. You don't have great, backup tackle options. Your backup tackle option to me, if Sexton is playing guard, is Sexton. You're bumping Sexton over to left tackle or to right tackle if you were to have an issue over there. So I don't feel as good right now about offensive line as I'd like to feel, but I feel a lot better about it than what I did maybe 2-3 months ago. The emergence of Tarkin into the starting lineup, getting to be that left tackle, and Sexton showing that he's a pretty good guard. Even if most people project him as a really good left tackle, he's holding up pretty well at guard too. And then again, the emergence of Josh Bates, taking advantage of the injury to Troy Everett and starting to develop and show some signs of being a starting Power 5 center. And then, the Fabechi Weewu addition has proven to be a great addition as well. And then just still seeing that development out of Jake Taylor. You got a long way to go. You still got 4 months until the beginning of the college football season. So there's still a lot of time to continue to develop this group. But yeah, to me, it's still the biggest question mark because of, like you said, the role that it plays, the level of importance, the positional value that it has. But I think you're right on the money too, that tight end is a bit concerning. You want to see a little bit more production in the spring game out of that group. At the same time, we saw this team win 10 games a year ago without much production from tight end. And I think that's a group that can continue to develop as well. Man, I don't really have a whole lot of issues out there. When I'm looking at this team, I don't see a ton of glaring issues. Obviously there's still positional battles that are taking place at linebacker, at cornerback, at safety, at wide receiver to an extent. But if there's a big question mark that I'm going to be following for the rest of the offseason, it's just health in general. Angelo Anthony, when does he come back? Nick Anderson, will he be full for fall camp? Jalil Farouk, same. That's an important part of the discussion for this deep wide receiver group. It's really deep if all those guys are available, but if they're not all available, then you're having a little bit of an issue. And then I think Gary and Hatchett, you get him back, you get him healthy, and then that adds to your offensive line depth as well. So I feel better about offensive line. It's not a huge question mark, or at least as huge of a question mark as it was 2 months ago, but still it's got a lot to prove, I think, for everybody.
So if you had to pick today, which is the position group with the biggest question mark for you? I think for me now it's tight end.
Yeah, if we're just looking at, hey, all things are equal and you're not taking positional value into account, then probably tight end for me. Like, I feel good about running back. I feel good about wide receiver, aside from the health issues. I feel good about the cornerback depth, even though, okay, it's not a lot of proven talent out there aside from Woody Washington and Des Malone, but Des Malone's one of those guys making that step up to the Power 4 and taking on bigger, badder competition going into the SEC. So I want to see a little bit more from fall camp and just see how that group continues to round itself out, because I mean, Jacoby Johnson, Makari Vickers, Josiah Wagner, Des Malone, Kenai Walker, Woody Washington. I mean, there's a bunch of really good names. It's just a matter of seeing those names take steps to becoming legit starting cornerbacks. Getting Gentry Williams back healthy. Those are all big questions. And I think cornerback, you could probably throw in there with offensive line as far as a big question mark, in that, okay, we know what we're going to get from Woody Washington, but we don't know what the rest of the group is going to look like and how well it's going to hold up in 2024.
No, that's fair. Gentry Williams, you mentioned the health, and that unfortunately has been something that's plagued him so far. Mm-hmm. The play when he's healthy looks great. Oklahoma looks like it has a terrific corner in Gentry Williams, but is he going to be able to maintain, sustain, and be healthy for Oklahoma? If he is, then all of a sudden, Woody Washington, Gentry Williams, that's a great starting place. We'll see what Des Malone, how he factors in for Oklahoma. Again, I thought Kenai Walker looked like somebody that can help Oklahoma this season, and that doesn't factor in a number of young corners that probably are going to get a lot better from now to the beginning of next season for Oklahoma. So, but it's a fair position to have concerns about. I mean, I don't think that's unfounded at all.
No, and I think Kenai is just one of those guys that is steadily taking steps in the right direction. You know, it's not always going to be the same developmental track for everybody out there. We're seeing a guy like Grayson Halton take those steps in the right direction. He's improving every offseason with the Sooners and taking on more responsibility and getting more opportunities. I think Kenai Walker fits into that group as well. Came in with a lot of buzz and a lot of hype from Louisville, but hadn't really translated just yet. But maybe this is the year kind of things get put together and he's able to go out there and be that impactful corner that everybody expected him to be. I think, again, you just got to be patient with some of these guys. If the coaching staff has belief in them, there's reason for that. And so you just be patient, let development happen and let it play out, and we'll see where it takes us. But I think cornerbacks got the talent. It's just a matter of seeing that talent come to fruition and really blossom this season, because they're going to need it. They're going to need them to. I mean, the SEC, it's a passing league, just like every other league in college football now. You got to be able to defend a pass. And Oklahoma at times last year was not very good defending the pass, especially against Oklahoma State and against Kansas and against Arizona. So things got to improve on that front. But Brent Venables really believes that the back seven is in a much better spot right now than it was at this time a year ago. So everything's improving. Everything's continually getting better. It's not perfect yet, but you keep striving for it. But we're going to talk about who the spring ball MVP was. I think there's a lot of names that we could look at. We'll do that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
It's playoff time in the NBA and in the NHL. Baseball, it's back. It's in full swing. And FanDuel is your place to bet on every game right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet an automatic win. That's with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft, available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So Josh, the spring MVP, we could go a number of directions with this, but do you want to do it offensive side, defensive side, overall MVP? How do you want to take it first?
Yeah, we can divvy it up, offensive and defensive. I think that offensive MVP is pretty obvious. I mean, it's a slam dunk. Deion Burks. He was far and away the best player in the spring game, regardless of position, regardless of side of the football. So Deion Burks, because it's new, because it's fresh, and really because of some of the other injury concerns that have happened around him, Deion Burks absolutely is the offensive spring ball MVP for Oklahoma. He looks dynamic. He looks to me, and probably you and everybody else, John, like somebody that's so obviously going to be, if not the number one pass catching target, then right there alongside Nick Anderson, Jalil Farouk, you name it, as somebody that is going to easily eclipse 800 receiving yards and push for, I think, 1,000 and be right there, double figure type touchdown guy. He looks electric for Oklahoma.
Yeah. And the only reason those numbers that Josh is projecting aren't higher is because also you've got really good wide receiver options around him as well. So it's not going to be necessarily likely that he's going to push for 1,600 yards, but that doesn't mean he's going to have any less of an impact because of it. But yeah, I mean, Deion Burks is the talk of the town across college football. Josh Pate is doing, segments on Deion Burks, and so is JD Pickell, and everybody's talking about how great he is. I was on with Locked On College Football Spencer, and he was asking about Deion Burks, and what I really took away from Brent Venables' comments on him was the workout aspect, that he entered Norman and was just a workout warrior, just battled and was one of the stars of the winter workout session. And then obviously was one of the stars of spring ball as well. And it just reminded me of a guy like Jalen Hurts. When Jalen Hurts came to Norman back in 2019, he had a bit of a reputation already. He had been in some big games and played in a lot of big games for Alabama. But the thing that really got him to become one of the fan favorites in Norman was the way he attacked workouts. He became one of the stars, honestly, of that winter workout season, because he was squatting 500 or something like that. And they were releasing the videos of him doing that work, and everybody's just celebrating and things like that. But it was because he was going in and doing the work, and he was just a workout warrior. And then it translated to him having this breakout college season in 2019 that led to him becoming the a second round draft pick. And the rest is now history at this point for Jalen Hurts, who's become a franchise quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm getting the same vibes out of Deion Burks, a dude that came in and just hit the ground running, did not waste any time, making himself adored by his teammates, adored by the fan base, and a lot of it, and his coaching staff, because of the way he attacked workouts. So really, really excited to kind of see the trajectory for him. I mean, some people were talking about him as a top 100 first round NFL draft pick. Had he gone into the NFL draft this year, we're going to get him for a year, and then we'll see what all plays out. But I mean, I'm excited about Deion Burks. He's got that kind of personality that it just draws people to you, right? Like, you guys have had him on the ref, and every time I hear him talk and every time I see him, he's just got this big smile on his face. He's just like joy personified. And that's so much fun, man. And that's what football's about. Like, football is a game, and it should be enjoyed. And I'm glad to see Deion Burks as a guy that looks like he just enjoys football. So I'm excited to see where that goes. If we're talking about like another offensive player apart from maybe a Deion Burks, I want to say like Fabechi Wiwu and Jacob Sexton both have had really good springs by all accounts. Anybody that was out at practice or anybody that had been covering the Sooners talked about, hey, Jacob Sexton might be Oklahoma's next big offensive line draft prospect. Fabechi Wiwu has come in and just become a force at right guard. So that's an exciting potential tandem that you have, even though they play different positions. But if Sexton and Wiwu end up being your guards, man, that's pretty exciting to have those two along your offensive line.
No, that's a good point too. And to get back to, is offensive line still Oklahoma's biggest question? Well, probably not, in some people's minds, because of those two guys and the types of springs that they've had. And if we're talking transfer portal additions, Fabechi Wiwu right there alongside Deion Burks offensively has just been gigantic for Oklahoma. And that's not to take anything away from Michael Tarkin, who's been good. And, there's a number of other offensive additions we could talk about. But Fabechi Wiwu seems to be that familiar name that everybody's raving about. And he's got that NFL draft buzz around him to be, a big-time NFL draft pick for Oklahoma. There's that sort of talk starting to bubble up and brew, and obviously now he's got to go earn it over the course of this next season. Defensively, I think that Jaden Jackson, just the way the spring played out, it's hard not to – I don't know that today he's Oklahoma's best defensive player. I'm not saying that, but in terms of the buzz and the excitement that was generated throughout the spring, that's the first name that comes to mind is Jaden Jackson.
You're never going to find a bad time to have me talk about Jaden Jackson. I mean, just so excited for him and his family. And again, just one of those players that you just root for because he's got a great mentality, a great heart behind everything that he does. And he just attacks everything that he does. And to hear guys like Teddy Lehman talk about how he could start for Oklahoma at nose tackle. I mean, that's just crazy to think about. This time a year ago, several places still had him as a 3-star prospect, and the buzz was starting to change. The tide was starting to turn on that, and he was starting to get a little bit more buzz. And I'd have to go back to exactly when we started talking about it, but it feels about this time a year ago, where, he just started to ascend, and people really started to understand like how valuable he was to IMG Academy's defensive line. Also, it helped that you had a guy like David Stone saying, "Hey, I'm really good, but I'm also really good because this guy that's playing next to me." And you go back and you watch the tape, and it's absolutely true. Like, Jaden Jackson is an absolute force. And in the spring game, you saw it. You saw him, hold up on double teams. Like, people were double teaming. He was not moving. He held his ground. And that's what you want out of your nose tackle. Sometimes they're going to be the guy that gets in the backfield and makes the play. And he did plenty of that, whether it was, the tackle stunt, where he was looping around with a Grayson Halton, or it's holding up at that spot in the double team in the run game so that nobody else can move. You're just mucking it up, and that guard can't climb to the second level and block Danny Stutzman. That running back can't bounce outside or bounce through that guard tackle hole that may or may not be there, because that defensive tackle, that nose tackle, is just mucking everything up. And that's the thing that's been missing from Oklahoma for years. They've had solid players, Neville Gallimore, the Jalen Redmond, the Perrion Winfrey. Like, they've had solid players at defensive tackle, but they haven't had that guy. And that guy, he is an every down player at the collegiate and probably at the NFL level, because he's got the size and the strength to hold up and run downs, and he's got the quickness and the burst to be able to be a force in the middle on the pass rush. So, dude, Jaden Jackson has been a stud. You hear guys like Teddy Lehman rave about him on the Oklahoma Breakdown, and Teddy Lehman's probably not a dude that's going to throw out a lot of hyperbole. He's not going to overblow things. I think he's going to be probably more critical of things on the defensive side of the ball than most people. And to hear him rave about Jaden Jackson, I think it just supports everything that everybody else is saying. When a guy like that is also throwing all this praise behind him. So yeah, it's got to be Jaden Jackson, but also Danny Stutzman, obviously. Like, Danny Stutzman, Ethan Downs had a great spring game, and because of Adepoju Adebaware and R. Mason Thomas, everybody's kind of still sleeping on Ethan Downs a little bit, but he looks like a guy that, he could really have a breakout season, and we're going to be like, man, where did that come from? Well, it's like everything's kind of been brewing for him, and another guy that just continues to take steady steps in the right direction in development. So there's a lot of really good defensive players, but I think you're absolutely right that Jaden Jackson has kind of been the star of camp and showed to be very, very valuable in the spring game.
And I think a number of defensive guys have taken steps. Kenai Walker talked about his play in the spring game. But for me, probably the bulk of the noticeable growth so far does appear to be up front, which is great for Oklahoma. Ethan Downs, as you said, I think he had a wake-up call when he got the draft grade, and he said as much, and that was highly motivating for Ethan. And now we're seeing the fruits of that labor. But I even think about Grayson Halton had a big-time spring game. Devon Sears is somebody that Brent Venables in particular said, hey, that was our most improved player. That was who they chose as most improved player. So I think that's really encouraging when you start thinking, okay, well, who are if we call them MVPs or most improved players, who's made the biggest jumps this spring? It does feel like a lot of that for Oklahoma has been along the defensive line.
And it's no surprise that it's starting to happen at the same time that all of these guys are really hitting the weights that Oklahoma has their goals for. Grayson Halton is getting to 295, but staying, quick and agile and explosive. And obviously Jaden Jackson, David Stone putting on the weight, but also staying really, really explosive in their own right. So, dude, it's exciting. Oklahoma's got the defensive line, or at least the building blocks for the defensive line that we've been hoping for and we've been begging for, and what we've been expecting since Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis followed Brent Venables over from Clemson. We just spent a whole lot of time talking about Jaden Jackson, but are there other freshmen, true freshmen, that could earn some playing time in 2024? We're going to discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Monopoly Go. It's a great place to go and just have fun, man. But it's one of my favorite apps now. I've downloaded it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great mobile twist on classic Monopoly. You can play anywhere, anytime. You can explore hundreds of Monopoly boards from Las Vegas to Camelot to the moon, all while raking in a huge fortune. Charge rent on iconic properties just like classic Monopoly. You can charge your friends rent on your iconic properties or go after their Monopoly money by pulling bank heists and taking wrecking balls to their landmarks. But my favorite part is the leaderboards, where you can see who's a Monopoly tycoon and who's gone bankrupt. So go get yourself on the charts. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store and the Google Play Store. Also want to talk to you about Gametime. Gametime is the best place to go get last minute tickets and the lowest prices guaranteed over at Gametime. It's now an authorized marketplace of Major League Baseball tickets, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. Talked about it on the show yesterday, but if you're looking to get in and go watch the Oklahoma City Thunder and take on the NBA playoffs, I mean, Gametime is the place to go. Use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE over on Gametime. Again, download the Gametime app in the Google Play Store or the App Store as well. Create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege, download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Michael Boganowski. That's a name right there that has earned some playing time coming out of spring ball. The dude hits with thunder. He brings the bang. Reminds me a little bit of our Robert Spears Jennings. When he gets on the field, Robert Spears Jennings makes it known that he's on the field. But Michael Boganowski is a dude that stood out, a true freshman that stood out in the spring game because, man, he was ready to go hit somebody. And, you saw him lay out Bauer Sharp. You saw him, put another hit on somebody. And the offensive guys did not necessarily take too kindly. And that's the kind of guy you want on your field on defense, just getting in the craw of everybody else. But thunderous hitter, I'm excited to see what he's got to bring to the table in 2024.
Yeah, I think he's going to be in the two deep. Just watching what we got to see in the spring game, I'll be a little bit surprised if Boganowski isn't. And I think he's going to pass up a veteran or two. I think a Robert Spears Jennings, I think you got to watch your back a little bit over the next couple of months and weeks because this kid's coming. And unless you prove that you're ready to go earn snaps now, I think Boganowski's going to come earn them because I love what he's about right now. He looks like a potential big-time player quickly at Oklahoma. Reggie Powers is somebody that I think has impressed in the secondary as well. Would like to see some of these other young defensive backs go make some plays between now and the start of next season. Isosa and Eugene Brooks, not necessarily in a starting capacity, but look, those are guys that right now are on the 2 deep for Oklahoma. Will they both stay there with the addition of Branson Hickman? Okay, that remains to be seen for Isosa, but looks like Eugene Brooks has got a chance to be sort of in the mix for the interior of Oklahoma from an offensive line standpoint. Again, I don't think that either of those two are starters. Hopefully, knock on wood, at any point this season for Oklahoma, not really of their own failings, but just kind of based on what a traditional path of development looks like for offensive line. And I don't think that's a bad thing for them. I think it's a positive that they're in the mix, but this has the makings of a special freshman class just based on some of that and Boganowski. And obviously any of these conversations, you have to say David Stone and Jaden Jackson. And I feel bad not mentioning Nigel Smith, and we'll see about Jaden Hardy and Zion Kearney. He dropped the one pass, but just physically, he looks like somebody that it's not going to take too long to start turning some heads. So this looks and feels like a very special freshman class.
It does. And I expect we'll see Michael Hawkins. I expect we'll see Taylor Tatum. He hasn't been on campus yet, but I expect we'll see him either in kick return duties or getting opportunities late in games, or, just, hey, this is the Taylor Tatum package right here. We're going to get him the ball, get him in space, and let him do some things. I think we'll see some Xavier Robinson, short yardage situations. You want to get a dude that's a thumper, get him ready in goal line, get him ready on 3rd and 4th and 1, get him ready to just plow guys. So I think there's opportunities for a lot of these freshmen. Devon Mitchell, tight end, we just talked about it earlier in the show. It wasn't great and people have been bragging and praising Bauer Sharp and what he's about, his toughness, his mentality, his physicality, his athleticism. So we'll see. I mean, if he's able to prove it on the football field in 2024, then I think you've got something there. But if not, I mean, you got a Davin Mitchell that's waiting in the wings and could potentially be a dude that takes over at tight end, at least in passing situations, whether it's, 3rd and 7 plus, there's a great opportunity to get a guy like Mitchell on the field. Obviously we'll see Michael Hawkins, especially in games like Maine or Arkansas State, or, some of those games where Oklahoma might be able to get out to a big lead. Get your Michael Hawkins out there. Let him get his feet wet. Let him get some game reps and get prepared for the future, because who knows what the future holds, but you want to have your young quarterback ready to go in the event that he has to play. We've seen, we saw Jackson Arnold just this last year have to be, ready to go in a game situation, in a tight ball game. And he came through because he got a lot of reps early in the season. They didn't worry about redshirting him. Hopefully they don't take the same approach, or hopefully they do take the same approach with Michael Hawkins and don't worry about the red shirt, because 4 years time, who knows what's going to transpire. You got to kind of have a guy ready to go. And that's not to say that Casey Thompson can't be the backup quarterback. He's very capable, played a lot, but Hawkins is special. He's got a great electricity to him. So yeah, there's a lot of freshmen. And you mentioned Nigel Smith. Danny Okoye is another one, dude. He's just a very, very athletic dude. I'm not saying he's going to necessarily get a lot of playing time this year, but it wouldn't surprise me to see him continue to get better this offseason and then get himself some significant snaps because you still need a good pass rush. And he's a guy that you could bring in on 3rd down and just like, hey, go get that quarterback. So a lot of options, man. And what's exciting about this is you're seeing the Brent Venables recruiting really start to take hold this year, where the depth chart just looks so tight and there's so many talented players now. It's not, you're looking at it and like, oh man, what's going to happen here if this guy goes down? Oh man, the defense is really going to be relying upon Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman. But yeah, it will, but you've also got talented players behind them that are getting better and ready to go. And a lot of those are freshmen.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to watch all of this play out. If I give you 2 names and only 2 of freshmen that you feel like will help Oklahoma in 2024, I think we both agree Jaden Jackson. And one more beyond that, I think based on what I saw in the spring game, I'm going to say Boganowski.
Yeah, I'll say Boganowski at the very least in a rotational safety role. I still feel good about, Billy Bowman, obviously, and Robert Spears Jennings. I think those could be your 2 starters. And then Peyton Bowen and Michael Boganowski being those guys off the bench, playing a lot of rotational snaps. We've seen them play 3-4 safeties at a very regular basis because they don't want to overextend these guys. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Michael Boganowski be kind of that Robert Spears Jennings replacement, especially on rundowns, because that Bogue's going to come in and he's going to hit with authority.
Yeah, it's fun. And David Stone, probably light bulb's not going to take too long to come on for him either. But again, I think this looks like a special freshman class. Now, time will tell on all of that. The superlatives, they're great, but got to go earn it. But it does look good so far. It's promising.
And we get 3 to 4 years to 5 years with these guys over the next half decade. So that's going to be exciting to watch as well. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. Also go check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's available also now on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. But until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.